Throughout my time on YouTube, I haven't made too many videos talking about NBA busts. Because for me, I don't want to judge a player so early into their careers. It's not reasonable to lose hope on a player after just a few years. They might just be late bloomers, and we've seen it happen a couple of times. Players who were drafted very high but started off very slow, but eventually blossomed later in their careers. I'm talking about guys like Chauncey Billups or Tyson Chandler or even Steve Nash. They all come to mind. Unfortunately, the majority of the time, this does not happen. It's very rare to see a player start off very poorly and then pull it together to become a star. It simply does not happen that often. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about some NBA players who I believe are busts. In my honest opinion, I don't see these guys turning it around, and for some of them, their careers might be coming to an end in the near future. Also, I won't be talking about players who are clearly busts and not even in the NBA anymore. Like, for example, Anthony Bennett. It's obvious that he'll never live up to his draft position. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started. First, we gotta talk about Michael Kidd Gilchrist, the second overall pick of the 2012 NBA draft, and as of this video, he's only 26 years old. He recently turned 26 before the 2019-20 season started. However, he was just one player on a long list of Charlotte Bobcats that ended up never living up to his potential. In the 2012 draft, it was quite obvious that Anthony Davis would be the consensus #1 pick. But what made it so terrible for Charlotte was that they went 7-59 in the previous season. They recorded the lowest winning percentage in NBA history, yet they still wound up with the second overall pick. There used to be conspiracy theories about New Orleans getting the first pick, which mainly centered around the fact that the NBA itself owned the team during this time period. And getting the #1 pick would increase the value of the team as it would later be purchased by Tom Benson. Anyway, I'm getting off track. The point is, Charlotte got very unlucky to begin with. And while Anthony Davis became a superstar, Michael Kidd Gilchrist has spent his entire career as a role player. And now, in the 2019-20 season, he's barely even getting minutes, and looks like he's fallen out of the rotation. Instead, the team has opted to focus on developing their actual young prospects, and pretty much gave up on MKG. It's been a rough ride for him. Back in 2014, it was reported that he was working to fix his jump shot with Mark Price, a former Hornets assistant and a great shooter back in his day. However, in that same season, he suffered multiple injuries that caused him to miss 27 games. Then, in the following season, he missed all but 7 games due to a severe shoulder injury. That was on his right shoulder too. As a result, his early development was stunted. Even to this day, his jump shot, which was what everyone knew he had to work on to become a star, just never developed successfully. Defensively, he's taken full advantage of his physical tools, but in this day and age, a wing player needs to be able to shoot. MKG has not shown that he could. Before we move on from the 2012 draft, I gotta mention Dion Waiters as well. Drafted right after Bradley Beal and 2 spots before Damian Lillard. Waiters never became anywhere near as good as those 2 stars. His career was marked with unhappiness, overconfidence, and a lot of disagreements with his coaches and teammates on basically every team he's been on. Giving himself the nickname Kobe Wade in high school, Waiters was obviously a little bit too confident. Even at his best, he was barely even a fringe starter. Recently, the Miami Heat even suspended him for 10 games for behavior that was detrimental to the team. And by that, I mean he ate some THC-infused edibles on a plane, which is basically marijuana candy. That led to him having a panic attack which scared the hell out of everyone on the team. Next up, Nerlens Noel. While Noel has occasionally shown flashes of star potential, it's once in a blue moon. For a guy who was initially considered the #1 pick of the 2013 draft, but then dropped down to #6 because of a torn ACL, he still severely underachieved. 6 seasons later, and he still hasn't made any improvement since he was a rookie. His offensive game is so unpolished, he still can't shoot outside of 10 feet. He can barely create his own shot, and over 70% of his shots are assisted. In fact, his highest number of minutes played per game was in his rookie season, the only time of his career where he averaged over 30 minutes a game. His role is to be an energetic, hustle player off the bench who catches lobs and sets picks. For a guy who was once thought of as a potential #1 pick, that's pretty sad to see how his career progressed. Other two big men from the 2013 class include Alex Len and Cody Zeller, both of whom were drafted right before Noel. They haven't been much better. Although Zeller has been consistently a solid starter for years, his career stagnated. The same with Alex Len, who contributes in limited minutes, but he isn't making much progress into becoming a star either. Moving on to the 2014 class. Normally, Andrew Wiggins would be on this list, but he's had a resurgence and is finally showing the talent that he's always been capable of. However, that's not the same for the 5th pick of the class, Dante Exum, an absurdly hyped up prospect who unfortunately suffered a ton of brutal injuries in his young career. He tore his ACL in his left knee after his rookie season. He had shoulder surgery 2 years later, and then 2 years after that, he tore his patellar tendon in his right knee. It's ridiculous how he suffered so many major injuries in such a short time, and he's only 24 years old. While I don't like to label players as busts if injuries were their downfall, but this is a situation where I don't see Exum ever reaching his ceiling. Perhaps his current situation in Utah is not a good fit for him. Even when completely healthy, his opportunity in Utah has run its course, and maybe a change of scenery will help them get back on track. Recently, he also talked about how Coach Snyder is more strict with him compared to other players on the team. Because even though he wants more playing time, he has not gotten it, and he's on a very short leash. When talking about this, he said, quote, "Coming in, I was adamant about being a point guard, and I still am. I still want to be, but I'm fighting for minutes. I want minutes. I think for me going forward, the best thing is just being on the court. I've had this conversation with my coach many times. It's just the expectation of me is so high when I go in, and I like to hold myself to a high standard as well. Yeah, I might have a tighter leash, but I expect myself to go in there and hold myself to that standard." From the 2015 draft, we have Jahlil Okafor, the 3rd overall pick. Just like with Michael Carter-Williams and Nerlens Noel, his former comrades in Philly, Okafor also peaked in his rookie season. Afterwards, he's hardly made any improvements to his game, and then he fell off. As a rookie, he put up 17 points and 9 rebounds. But defensively, he was so bad that he made Enes Kanter look like an All-NBA defender. That's how bad Okafor was on defense. And being that bad as a big man is also awful for your team's defense. That's why Okafor did not get to play significant minutes after that. Well, initially, they were hoping Okafor would be better, but the Sixers quickly realized that they made a mistake, and got rid of him after just 2 seasons. The only thing he brought to the team was being the tank commander for a couple years, before the era of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Keep in mind, Okafor was a national sensation before he joined the NBA. As a senior in high school, he was ranked as the #1 prospect in the entire country. In his lone season at Duke, he led the team to the NCAA championship and was named the ACC Player of the Year. Okafor shouldered a ridiculous amount of expectations, and yet he lived up to absolutely none of it. Also, shout out to the 5th overall pick that year, Mario Hezonja, one of the greatest prospects from Croatia who also saw his career flounder. The good news is, at least he always has one ridiculous highlight every year, so that's something, I guess. The 2016 draft, most of the players at the top have been either very good or decent, except for Dragan Bender, the 4th overall pick. Another Croatian player drafted high in back-to-back years, and another bust. Bender has been a non-factor for his entire career so far. Not only that, but everything about him is terrible. He's a 7-footer who has a career field goal percentage that's lower than 40%. The funny thing is, he was drafted for his ability to shoot, his versatile post-game, and his ability to handle the ball and pass. At least, that's what the scouting report said prior to the draft. However, his three-point shooting has been quite poor, and every other part of his game has been awful. Even in his sophomore season, where he appeared in all 82 games for the Suns, played 25 minutes a game, and the results were 6 points per game, 4 rebounds a game, and 39% from the field. I mean, if he can't even produce on a team that's tanking, there's no way he'd make an impact on a team that's contending, like the Milwaukee Bucks. Currently, he's just warming up the bench and barely playing. Now, at this point, from the 2017 draft and onwards, it's a bit too early to tell if those guys are actually busts. I've talked about guys like Josh Jackson and Dennis Smith Jr. in a recent video, about how they've been struggling a lot. DSJ looks nothing like he did in Dallas, and Josh Jackson has gotten into so many off-court endeavors that it's hard for me to see him coming back from that. But anyway, that sums up the video. I named a lot of players who are still in the league, but I truly believe they are bona fide busts. I really can't see any of them making that leap or reaching that next level. I think it's simply too late for them to prove themselves. Most of them have had so many chances to prove that they deserve more minutes. But as it turns out, they've been getting less and less playing time. Before we know it, they'll be out of the NBA. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on these players I mentioned, and do you agree or disagree with my selections? Do you have any more players to add onto the list? Let me know in the comments. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, I'll see you next time. Peace.